our next guest, our next person is Lucas Aaron. Okay, and Lucas Aaron is somebody I got connected to with Keegan Smith, and really that's how all this whole world works. We all kind of learn about each other and play together in this whole thing. And Keegan Smith runs this coaching organization, an amazing coaching organization, and Lucas coaches with him. Lucas is a specialist, and we wanted to do a combination of these things of entertainment, of true strength feats, a wide variety of cool physical or mental, human things or whatever. This is one of the things that is educational. So this was what Lucas Aaron's going to do, and he's going to actually teach on some very specific flexibility. So in his bio, he talks about Lucas was a powerlifter, but not very flexible at all, and then he got really, really into flexibility. Now he's one of the top flexibility coaches in the world, if not the top one. Very close. He went from no flexibility to like crazy flexibility, and in a wide variety of directions, but also loaded and strong flexibility at the same time, which is right up my alley, right up the alley of all the stuff that we do. And he's got a very teaching-based presentation that's going to be some very cool stuff. So you guys stay tuned and watch that. And again, we're all over the world there. We went from Australia to Canada to back to Lucas in Canada. And we just love that all over the world people participated. Later on, we got some guys from Europe coming. Thanks again for everybody. But watch Lucas, and there's a lot to learn within this presentation. If you really really pay attention to this, there's a lot. He gave a lot of information, so stay with it and stay tuned.
I'm going to be moving on to some discussion of range training, specifically extreme inner range. And before we begin here, I would just like to thank Bud Jeffries and his wife for putting this all together. Noah's Army 2020 Memorial, due to the current circumstances and situation in the world we live in, putting this together as a virtual event and the pursuit of excellence. It's everything that I am about, and I'm very honored to be here presenting and talking training with everyone that's here. So thank you very much for having me on, Bud. We will be going into some discussion on the extreme inner range today. And before we start, who am I? So my name's Lucas Aaron. Many know me as Range of Strength on my social media platforms. I am a strength and flexibility coach. And most importantly, I'm a mentor for Real Movement. So Real Movement is a performance education platform for coaches. And I am one of the mentors that work for that platform. I do consider myself to be flexibility expert. There are a few of us out there, and I have spent the last 7 years studying flexibility thoroughly, implementing it and creating massive change in my life. Coming from a strength training background, a strength athlete background, I do consider myself to be a strength athlete, and my presentation of flexibility is presented in that way, where we can have both flexibility at a high level and strength. So in pursuit of both is what I aim to promote. And I do so through the Range of Strength certification on the Real Movement platform. But what I wanted to present today in this Pursuit of Excellence event is just a little bit of a flip side to the range of strength that most people commonly associate with when they see what it is that I do and promote and am capable of. And that is the extreme inner range. So when people get into our styles of training on the Real Movement platform and Range of Strength, this often throws them off a little bit, because we promote this quite heavily, just as much as we promote the extreme outer range, which we would categorize splits and big range positions under that extreme outer range. We promote extreme inner range just as much, and if not more, in most scenarios and situations in our training systems. So I just wanted to give you an overview of the importance of extreme inner range, maybe create some discussion afterwards. You can reach out to me on my platforms or through this event. I'm happy to dive a little further into discussion around like how we use it and why, but just for the sake of the event here, I wanted to just have a brief overview and present some of the things that we win with using extreme inner range, and create some discussion around that. So what is the extreme inner range? So we could think of it as movements that don't load the connective tissues in such a way that they traditionally do in outer range movements or middle range movements. And this is due to us putting the agonist muscle in a more extreme shortened position with one out of two joints in the shortened position. So the focus becomes the inner range portion of the movement. So we would look at an extreme inner range exercise as having a force curve that makes the inner range of the movement the hardest part of the movement. So an astrograph squat wouldn't really be considered extreme inner range or middle range. So think about like where the movement is its hardest. And if we were to apply extreme inner range methodology, we would be using it in a way that the hardest part of the movement would be at the inner range of the movement. And I'll present a few examples of that we use. So we could think of it as a false grip lock-in. So elbows, lats, wrists. So in the lock-in style on the gymnastic rings, we're holding that top position. So within that, we're creating an extreme inner range contraction, and we're not loading the connective tissue. The back bridge itself, if an individual can get themselves conditioned to a point where they can perform a back bridge, they will actually be addressing the extreme inner range strength of the upper back and the glutes, which that is very overlooked when people train for a back bridge. They want to think about opening up the shoulders and the trunk, which you do end up doing. But when I train flexibility, I put a primary focus on developing that extreme inner range strength in developing a back bridge before getting into extreme outer range positions. We can think of some static gymnastics lever positions, half lever positions, and V-sit positions as extreme inner range strength. Knee extensions, hip flexors, ankles, everything contracts in an extreme way, and we're not loading the connective tissue in that position. Another example could be the calf raises done all the way up onto the points of the toes. So in doing so in that way, we move into this more extreme inner range focus. And just with those 4 examples in mind, I'm sure if you're listening and thinking about exercise selection and prescription, you may now start to think about other movements and exercises that move you through an extreme inner range. And that would be something that you should consider in organizing a training session or overcoming certain situations. Now we'll talk a little bit about what that entails or what that could look like. So why extreme inner range? Why do we want to consider this? Well, like I said prior, we are creating strong circulation through muscles without loading the connective tissue to a high level. So we're not creating connective tissue damage. And we do want connective tissue damage. We do want connective tissue adaptations to occur. But what happens is the focus in traditional training sessions becomes so much on this that often the case is that overtraining occurs and overuse injuries occur. When we learn and train with extreme inner range strength, we increase mind-muscle connection. So if we are thinking about flexibility and moving into a greater position to stretch the muscles or move the muscles through a greater range of motion with strength, the more strength and mind muscle connection that we have in the inner range of those stretches is going to allow us to move stronger in these positions and be stronger in these positions. So often the case in flexibility training, the focus is on the muscles being stretched, but the opposite is true as well. We want to be focusing on the muscles being shortened in an extreme way. If we can develop core levels of strength in a V sit or an L sit, then reaching down to touch our toes is going to be a lot easier because we have that extreme inner range strength awareness and connection. So we know how to actually contract and shorten muscles when we're in stretch positions. Using extreme inner range exercise allows us to also prepare for outer and extreme range work. This is something that we promote heavily in real movement and in range of strength systems, is that often the case with outer range, extreme range movements is to focus on that. I'm focusing on splits. I'm getting stronger in these outer range positions and focusing on that to the point where we're putting ourselves in such an outer extreme range of motion, and the focus is so much on that often the case is that in pursuit of that strength, extreme outer range strength, overuse injury is quite common. So on the flip side of that, we can create that muscle function and balance by addressing the extreme inner range strength at the same time. So anyone that trains range of strength or real movement style training on our platform knows that we address the extreme outer range just as much as we address the extreme inner range. This is pain-free movement. So think about this scenario when we do get an overuse injury or we do get a little strain or inflammation. Using extreme inner range training will help you accelerate your recovery from these times and dips. It can be used during deloading phases or tapering phases where we still want to be driving the system up and creating that neural drive in our training, but we don't want to be completely damaging and overusing the connective tissue. So we're able to support hypertrophy without creating overuse injuries. So often, again, the case is in pursuit of muscle building, which, muscle building is one pursuit of mitigating risk of injury. We move through as much range of motion as possible. That is a good thing. You want to be capable of doing that and doing that well. But in order for us to be able to support that type of training and accelerate our recovery, we do want to be addressing the extreme inner range strength as well. So to overview this quick discussion, and hopefully this has a few sparks going off in your brain, you're considering on how you address this in your training. One of the best examples that I can provide with this system is Ben Patrick's knee ability program, knees over toes guy, ATG systems. He addresses extreme inner range strength for knee health like no other program that I've seen out there. And it does win with the balance of having the extreme inner range strength added to addressing the middle range, outer range, extreme outer range positions for knee ability. So if you think about how you could apply that for your elbows, your shoulders, hips, you can win really big in how you structure your programming and pursue excellence in your performance. So again, overview here is that when we apply and use extreme inner range training, we're using a training method that is neurally dominant, but it's not connective tissue damaging. So most of these neurally dominant movements or exercises or pursuits of training are very damaging to connective tissue, and they break us down, require a lot of recovery. Whereas when we use extreme inner range training, we can find periods of neural dominance in our training without it completely driving us down and needing so much more recovery. Because of this, it is suited for higher volume when we do inner range strength work. So a 5 to 20 repetition range works really well for this. Static hold times, we would be thinking about 15 to 30 seconds. And just the focus being more on volume than on low repetition. And we still get that neural drive, and we get it from the volume. So we bring fresh blood and fluids, lymph to the connective tissue. So you can think about, for recovery purposes, the more that we can do that, the stronger we will be, the better, faster we will recover. So if we can do that more frequently, then we can bring ourselves to another level. And it allows us to be creative with our training as well, too. So, I mean, if you are a follower of Bud Jeffries, he's very creative. Now he lays out his movement systems. It's not about, one set way or the other. Being strong in partial ranges of motion, full ranges of motion. This is the concept here as well, too, is think about how, we want to be strong in all movements. There's little inflammatory effect in training the extreme inner range. So if you think about it, if we can use movements that are neurally dominant with very little inflammatory effect, we optimize recovery, we optimize performance, we find ways to do more between sessions, do more within sessions, and overcome periods of time when we do need to get over heavier periods of hard connective tissue damage from training. It is a process that should occur at some stage where you are damaging the connective tissue so you can recover and adapt and bring yourself to that supercompensation level. Where these movements are concentric dominant, so the focus should be slower on the concentric and less on the eccentric phase. So just think about, like, for the most part, all other movements really focus on eccentric lengthening. So we really focus on the slower portion of the movement being through the eccentric phase. Inner range movements, we're thinking a little bit slower through the concentric phase and less about the eccentric phase, because there isn't really much of an eccentric phase for these movements. Most of them can be static, but the focus and the pump is in a very partial range of motion. So that is a brief overview of extreme inner range strength. This is one of the key attributes to real movement training systems, range of strength training systems that we use on our platform, in our education programs, our training programs. And realmovement.com is where you will find more information about what it is that we do. And our goal is to become the leading performance education system out there for modern day coaches just like yourselves, or athletes that are just pursuing excellence. So that is it for me. Again, thank you so much for having me a part of this, Bud. This is an excellent opportunity to bring many great minds together around the globe and show that, we stand strong during tough times like this. So thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much, Lucas, for the information. But listen, if you guys need to know about flexibility, you obviously get now. Lucas has got a whole thought process and series of different ways of looking at it. It's phenomenal information. And so, again, thank you very much. Thanks for Keegan for connecting us and for that whole thing. We kind of sort of support each other on different kinds of strength feeds and lifts. Hopefully, we'll be working coaching together sometime soon. And it's pretty doggone cool. Very, very cool. So, thank you again for supporting. We'd be super, super